Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the State of the Sasquatch address for the year 2025. This is the continuation, the 10th year, in fact, that we have done this. And if I must say, this is the first year in all of those 10 that I have actually given very serious thought to skipping it. We'll get into specifically why that is in just a moment, but I suppose it's good for continuity to continue, and so here we are. As those who are maybe new to this or who have just wandered in for some reason, I'd like to give a brief summary of what we'll be addressing here this evening. This is an annual account of my own personal life, and I'm Sasquatch, otherwise known as Gavisas, for those of you who are uninitiated. But it is a focus on what I tend to view the four main areas of life, those being faith, family, fitness, and finance. And it's both a way of me to kind of keep in annual touch with some friends who may not be able to spend time with me on a regular basis, or I may not be able to spend time with them on a regular basis, so we can kind of keep up to date on things, but also as a way for me to sort of be able to look back on years that have gone by and evaluate how things have gone, how things may have gone better, and how things might be able to be changed in the future, what I'd like to see different perhaps. And so this year in particular is an interesting one. I believe every year before I've had some sort of generally very positive outlook in a situation that I found myself in. Some good thing has just been propelling me forward. But this year I find myself in a little bit of a different situation. As they say sometimes at the beginning of the State of the Union address, or as it is often done, particularly today, because this is released at the same time as either the State of the Union or the Joint Address to Congress, depending on which year of a particular president's term it is. The first year is always the Joint Address to Congress, and the other one is the State of the Union address. Why they're separate and different, I don't know. But this is put out directly to compete with that, and I don't necessarily think I'm going to be effective at it, but here we are nonetheless. Hence the State of the Sasquatch, State of the Union. Haha, I'm funny. Or at least I tend to think I am. Generally, I'm proven wrong. In the meantime, the point of all this is to sort of give just a broad overview of where I am. And as I said, this year is somewhat different than years past because I don't really have anything really exciting or positive to report. I guess I can table that and qualify it as well. But as we get into it, of course, I'd like to begin with faith. And if there is a positive thing, if there is a positive, it is, of course, my continued faith in the Lord. It has been an interesting year. The basics are, of course, that I have maintained my regular Bible readings, so I have read the Bible through 6 times this past year, as I have done for the last several years. I've done that as a majority for the as was actually a question that was asked to me earlier this year, that why do I read the Bible through so much? And it really is just more of a daily dedication. I'm not necessarily reading it every day to receive some new word from the Lord or to receive like divine revelation, but more as a continual dedication of my Christian walk. I find that is about the right amount for me. It takes not an inconsiderable amount of time, but not so much that it begins to interfere with other aspects of life. And so by reading in that quantity, it is helpful for me to have continual familiarity with the entirety of Scripture. That does not mean that that's all that I do. And again, this was a question that was asked to me recently by a friend. But I also do extensive self-study on multiple different topics, which is used to support a lot of my other more religious pursuits. That being said, for those who are unaware, I am a licensed minister with United Pentecostal Church International, and in pursuit to that, I do speak not infrequently, although perhaps less frequently of late, but we'll get into that in a moment, as a regular preacher at my church, as well as a teacher of Bible studies, and all sorts of other non-scheduled Bible studies that happen throughout the year that just sort of come up. So having consistent thoughts and a pool of information to draw from is incredibly important as a minister. Thus, my continue to reach into the Bible, both on a daily basis of just that daily dedication, but also on a daily basis of further study. I had quite an interesting thought this morning as it came out of Exodus chapter 4, which I'm quite looking forward to developing. Those of you who are aware that I am a preacher and that I have actually a separate channel on here called Truth and Value, I have posted on there several of the messages from this past year, some of which I thought were actually quite unique and special. So if you are interested, there will be a link in the description down below. You can go over and check those out if you are of a mind. In addition to that, I would say that this year I've been given kind of a new direction on what I'm really pushing for in my own personal walk with God. I've known for quite some time that I'm, called to be a preacher, and I've pursued that to the best of my ability, but in times past it's been a little bit muddled as to exactly what type of preacher that is to be. I've spent a considerable amount of time overseas and pursuing missions work and have thought on multiple occasions that that is going to be the end result. However, of late, in the last couple of years, I have been of a slightly different mind, and in particular, I have been looking into perhaps starting a church. There's a area, a little intersection, in fact, not too far from where I currently live, that is really quite speaking to me. It is at the point of 3 different churches, and I know that of my particular denomination, there is no church within probably 20 or 30 miles of that particular location. And so, being as it is in a little bit of a desert, it really does speak to me, as well as that being the intersection point of 3 cities. There's probably somewhere north of about 150 to 180,000 people, all within that 10 to 15 mile range. A very, very, very wide expanse of desert that I think it could use some watering. That being said, I don't just have this mentality and this mindset to build a church there, but really it's the kind of church that has been really speaking to me of late, that it's to be like a church of training, if I can put it that way, where, yes, there's, pastorship and everything, yes, spiritual authority, got that, but really a church where those who are looking for opportunities to serve that may not have them other places, and it might be able to find a opportunity to gain experience in ministry that would be blocked to them for any number of reasons elsewhere. I really am struck with this idea that it is an incredibly important thing that we have kind of a training ground available for people who want to be in the ministry and are pursuing that, because all too often those people can either be it is my own experience that in a church filled with talent, those who are at the lower end of the talent pool are sometimes overlooked. They can still provide a tremendous amount of benefit, but sometimes they get fewer opportunities. And so something to try and help build them up along the way, I believe, is incredibly important. And so as I've been praying about this and considering it and thinking about how to put this into action, the idea of building a church based on training other people has really begun to speak to me in a very profound way. And so as I move forward, and I don't know precisely when all this is going to come about, but as I move forward pursuing this, I expect that is going to be very largely what I'm going to be building my vision, I suppose, of a church into being. Of course, it's still quite a ways off, and we'll get into some of the reasons for that in just a moment here, but it is a real consistent thought that there needs to be, number one, a church in this particular area, but there also needs to be a place where young ministers can come and receive an opportunity to gain experience that they would not be able to get elsewhere. Really, really pushing into that. And I understand that myself, I'm actually quite young. I'm not yet 35. I will be by the end of this year. Good luck figuring out when that will change along the path, but that is a separate issue. Quite young, but perhaps because of my relative youth to other ministers, I feel this perhaps all the more strongly because I have been pressing for more experience for quite some time. Continuing to our next topic, which is the family topic, the least important portion of this would be that my family has both tragically and fortuitously and yet frustratingly traded out dogs this past year. My wife, when she and I got married, had a small Chihuahua. Her dog unfortunately passed away the day before our anniversary. That was a whole separate issue right there. The dog passed away, and it was incumbent upon me to make sure that that was taken care of as quickly as possible, because yes, you don't want to have, I won't get into the full story, but suffice it to say that I was burying her dog the day before our anniversary in the midst of a severe gout attack. I couldn't hardly walk, but I was not going to allow that animal to remain above ground during our anniversary. I just didn't see that being a very wise decision. So I pressed through the pain and made it happen anyway. And the anniversary was actually quite good, for those who were wondering. We did, however, a few months later, maybe it was weeks, I'm not sure. It was fairly close by. A friend of mine, he called me up and said, "Hey, would you like my dog?" And we are now the possessors of his former animal and our new chief headache, because he runs around the house like a crazy person, barks at everything, and I do mean everything. Every leaf that blows through the wind outside is a new target of his ire, and he has become both a joy, a blessing, and a severe frustration all at the same time. So we are thankful, I think. As I mentioned, my wife and I are now approaching rather quickly 2 years of marriage, very happily, I suppose. We have, on this last year, taken that trip to the Bahamas that we were supposed to take on our honeymoon that fell away the year prior. If you'd like an update on that, you can watch State of the Sasquatch 2024. But we finally were able to get on the boat, and had a very different experience, I'm afraid. My wife is, as we found out, prone to seasickness, and we went through some of the roughest seas that I suppose are possible. We met some people on the boat who had been on several cruises and been, tossed to and fro, and they said that there has never been a cruise they have been on as rough and tossed to and froing as the one in which we were. We went through the outer edges of a hurricane, the one that hit the eastern seaboard just before Hurricane Helene, and that was quite the exciting experience. I had a great time. I don't think I got seasick at all, and I had wonderful food and experiences and met nice people. And my wife was seasick a good portion of it, and she did not have quite as good a time as I did, unfortunately. But we endeavored to persevere anyway, and had as good a time as possible nonetheless. In regards to my wife, she still has some ongoing health issues, which does take me somewhat into the fitness portion of today's address. Her ongoing health issues, in some regards, I believe, have worsened than in years past. She now has fairly regular heart flutters and things like that, which will set off a chain reaction series of events. We've probably been into the hospital to address that maybe 30 or 40 times in the past year. It has been very, very much, sometimes multiple times a week. And to all extents and purposes, the medical community has been completely unhelpful and unable to provide any sort of meaningful aid or alteration to the situation. I find myself increasingly frustrated with our medical community, and for better or worse, I suppose, generally now view them as entirely useless. That's not related to the actual fitness thing. It's just my own frustration. Which I suppose is a fair point to make for just about anyone. If you have an ongoing issue and you are trying to go to the experts to receive aid in that situation, and the experts continuously promise the world and deliver nothing, I believe that there's a certain amount of understandable frustration that applies to all in that situation, and I just happen to be on the brunt end of it at the moment. Hooray. This, of course, has led to a number of other issues. Number one, my wife has been largely unable to work due to the health issues, which has kept me the sole provider, which a year or so ago wouldn't have really been that terrible of a situation, other than as was mentioned last year, I'm making considerably less money than I was at the glass factory. That, combined with a number of other factors, which all really came to a head today, which I'm not going to go into the full story of, but has led me into a position where, effective today, literally today, I am going to be leaving the powder coating company that I was working at all this last year and a half. And when I say leaving, I mean toot sweet, because it has become increasingly clear to me that there is just no future for me there, and even the present is not that great. In fact, it has become totally unacceptable, and I will leave it at that. But that is what it is, which is actually kind of quite the complication, because in the midst of all of this, we are also somewhat trying to find our way to move out of the mobile home that I bought several years ago. This will be 4 years that I've been here, and she's moved in 2 years ago, or just under 2 years ago. And it has come to our attention that it is not big enough, even for the two of us. And if at some point in the future she should become of good enough health, and we should both become of a mind to increase the size of our family, this is not the place to do it. Also, it's a mobile home and a mobile home park, and the rent keeps going up, and the costs keep going up, and the value of the house keeps going down. So it's not really a great investment opportunity either. We are looking, although looking at the moment without the funds to do so, to move out sometime this year. We're not entirely sure when. We're not entirely sure where. We do know generally that we want to have some level of land attached to it, which of course increases the price and the difficulty in finding it, because those are the houses right now that are going the most, that the market is just going the most stridently after. It seems like everybody wants to have a little piece they can call their own and use it for any manner of different purposes or reasons, or farming or chickens or gardens or whatever. But yes, it is an ever-growing challenge. And I don't mean for this to be a sort of a downer. Like, I find myself in a position right now where there's not a lot at this exact moment which is going particularly well. As I mentioned, I've been preaching less, and that has been out of deference to making myself available to accommodate some issues that have been going on elsewhere. A lot of my there's just a lot that's been going on that has not been necessarily going according to plan. And to the best of my ability, I've been trying to manage and contain that, but I'm finding myself not as capable as I would have hoped. And I suppose this really is the crux of it, that even in moments where things aren't going particularly well, even when all the plans and things that we've made seem to be coming undone, and the bright futures that we have seen for ourselves seem to be growing dimmer and dimmer, it's important to take a moment and stop and give careful consideration to where you are. And I say that in a moment where I'm not in a great place, and I'm being very honest with that. It's like I said, there's a lot of difficulties and challenges which have come upon me which are not typical. But in stopping and taking a moment to evaluate the situation as to where we are, it's almost comforting, if I can put it in those words, to be in that place and be in that moment where things are not as I would prefer them to be. Because being in that moment, supposed to say, when you've hit bottom, the only place to go is up. And there are some things there are some threads that are hanging down, which perhaps if twisted together might become a rope to pull me and my family and the entire situation out of the bottom of the pit. And I don't mean this to be a downer, because there is a tremendous amount of things which are not going well. But even as we are in the bottom, or appear to be in the bottom, I just can't help but feel And perhaps this is an extension of the faith portion of my life, which does tend to override everything else. That in the moments where we are least able to affect the outcomes and the situations in which we find ourselves, perhaps those are the moments in which we can have the most amount of faith. When the night is darkest, when things seem to be moving in the most negative of directions, those are the moments when we can, I believe, have the most faith, because all situations that are beyond our control are not beyond the control of the one who makes us and loves us and cares for us and carries us through all of life's situations and hardships and trials. It strikes me as though every difficulty is but an opportunity for God to reveal himself and to show forth his glory. Yes, the continuation of health issues and the downward spiral of finances and the less than stellar state of my own physical being at the moment are all but opportunities, I believe, for God to demonstrate his power and his mercy and his glory. It's a weird position to be in, perhaps, but it's one which like I said, I feel almost comforted in the fact that there's really nothing I can do about the situations in which I find myself. It's kind of like when years ago I was in the midst of all of my own health issues, and I was sleeping 18 hours a day and barely awake for the few hours I was awake for the rest of it. And I finally got the diagnosis from the doctor that said, hey, this is permanent brain damage. You're never going to get better. This is the end. This is how you're going to be from here on out. And I remember I looked the doctor straight in the face and I said, thank you. That is the best report that I have gotten throughout this entire ordeal, which at that point had been going on for 2 years. And it was simply the fact that there was nothing more that I could do about it. There was nothing more to be done. All that could be done had been done, and any other way out of it was totally out of my control. It was totally within the hands of God to get me out of that situation. And so I find myself here again. I'm in a situation in which I don't see the way out of. I have some thoughts, I have some ideas, I have some plans, I have some great hopes and dreams that things will turn out differently and turn out better and change for a more desirable outcome. But at the moment, I don't see it. I don't know the way out. There's not really all that much I can do to affect the change. I can keep plugging ahead, keep moving forward. That's about it. But it has already been my experience that in those moments when all other options to our natural eyes are gone, that is when God steps in and does his best work. And so, if I can put it this way, that in the midst of a dark time, I'm finding myself exceedingly hopeful that even at this point of extreme stress, yes, and difficulty and lack of options, that I believe God will bring us out of it, and that in the State of the Sasquatch 2026, there will be a much brighter, happier, more joyous report than I'm currently capable of giving. I thank you all for your time. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for skipping Trump's address. And we will see you all next year. God bless.